It started around Denver. Left Denver, you saw a lot of old wells on pump jacks.
Mm-hmm.
Those wells are 80, 90 years old. And they didn't know about natural gas in those days, so they just let it flare. And you can't flare now in Colorado. It's against the law. You can't vent in Colorado. They don't want to damage the air or the water. Colorado is very fussy about their water and air, probably the most in the United States. I think we're the only state that has where you're prohibited from flaring gas. You see it all over Texas, New Mexico, where the fires coming out of wells, flaring.
It's crazy.
You can't do that here. You can't vent gas into the air, just raw gas either. It's the only state. I think there's 11 states in the process of passing laws now that prohibit it. So they'll all be like Colorado.
I'd like to say something about that. They've done some testing around my region. And they say it's some of the worst polluted air in the country, but it's perfectly clean. You can breathe it. You don't smell because it's tasteless and odorless, the gas that comes out of the ground. But yet it's very polluted. And that's from all the gas being vented in the air. They don't allow that here in Colorado, which we need to get rid of it in Texas. I mean, for sure.
Even Wisconsin is now passing these same rules. And a lot of states, because Colorado's led by example, with very clean air, very clean water.
People are worried about people smoking. They're outside. It's far worse,
This whole area here, this white spot, is solid black with wells. There's 22,000 wells right here. But they don't cover that in because then you wouldn't see Wattenberg Field. Wattenberg Field is very well known worldwide. And it starts out way down south and then it grew into here. We actually caused the big rush in 1979 by moving out here, and we drilled the first well we're going to go by and show you. We drilled 30 wells in this area, and that triggered this whole boom. And
history maker right here.
I got the land from a company called Amoco, which was the old Amoco Oil and Gas. They farmed out 100,000 acres to me, which means they owned the land. They turned it over to me for no cost, and then they got 6.25% of every well we drilled. And they gave us 100,000 acres, so I had to drill 100 wells for them on their property. They got an interest on the first 100. And then we just grew from there. They pay nothing, but then I didn't pay anything for the land. When you start leasing this acreage out here, right now it's 500 an acre. That's pretty expensive. But I did a farm out of Kerr-McGee out here, and this is called Yuma, Colorado. And I took 385,000 acres, and Kerr-McGee had not drilled a well on it. We went out and we drilled 125. There's now 13,000. So we do a lot of this. It's really not wildcatting, but it kind of is. But when you have, like you do a farm out Amoco or Kerr-McGee, they give you all their geological data, their seismic, their satellite information. In the 80s we didn't have satellite, but we do now. But they give you all that as part of their package so you can help determine the best locations. So we drilled 125 right in through here. And now I think Unioil, which was the name of the company in those days, I went public at 10 cents a share, raised $3 million, and we drilled the first well right here in Johnstown. And it just grew from there. We sold the company to PDC, which is Petroleum Development Corporation of America. They're a big, big company. They bought it out 4 years ago, and when they bought it, it had 886 wells in it. And it could have had a lot more, but we had a lot of ups and downs. The market fell out in '83, and it fell out in '89, and it fell out in 2000. We have a lot of these, But the companies that stay with it make a lot of money. It's just a lot of them wind up going broke and give up. But the thing to do is just come back. And that's what we did. Then down here, way south of Colorado, there's a place called Walsenburg, Colorado. I don't know if you ever heard of Walsenburg. It's almost to New Mexico. Walsenburg is probably 150,000 people. It's right below the Air Force Academy, maybe 50 miles. We went down there on a farm out from Mobil Oil, and we drilled 126 wells on that property. All of them were a success, but then I had Mobil Oil's data. And they backed me with a geologist. Once they listen to us, they don't set foot on the property other than come out and inspect it, but they can't actively get involved, you know, because it's a conflict. So, but they provide us all the information they have, and it's a tremendous amount. A little guy like me could never get satellite information. They have rolls and rolls, videos, unbelievable. So
They charge
it's
you for
good to
that,
work with these big
They
companies.
charge you for that satellite information?
They don't charge us
It's
anything.
free.
They get 6.25% of every well we drill.
I see.
They own the land. They got it from Union Pacific Railroad. Union Pacific got it from the government in the 1800s for putting the railroad tracks across the United States. So they got every other mile for 20 miles, both sides of railroad tracks, clear across
I work for
California.
Union Pacific.
Hmm?
That's who I work for. I work for Union Pacific Railroad.
Okay. Well, Union Pacific is the biggest landholder in the whole United States, mineral owner. So Amoco went to them and got, I think, 1 million acres. They gave us 100,000. Kerr-McGee went to them and got land. Everybody did. And so the railroad gets 6.25% of every well drilled throughout here.
Wow.
They have a tremendous income.
Oh, wow.
There's
I didn't know that.
Colorado.
I need a raise.
Now you know where you're
I need a raise.
from.
I need a raise for real.
I know what you're getting.
I'm telling you.
There's 48,000 wells in Colorado now, and they own 6% of every one of them. And then they have Wyoming, Nebraska, New Mexico. I don't know if they have any rights in Texas. I know they do Kansas, because I did a lot in Kansas. But I've focused all my attention on Kansas, which is right here, and here, and
They
here,
probably
and down
do,
here.
considering it's the Railroad Commission that regulates all the oil in Texas. I mean, that's maybe a little clue.
Well, of course, they had no idea what was down there.
Yeah.
Nobody knew what oil was when they did those agreements. You know.
Well, our big oil fields in Texas, out in Odessa in the Permian Basin, that was all owned by the University of Texas because someone had left that land, that worthless, no good land, to university, and then they discovered oil when they drilled the Santa Rita #1 out in Texon, Texas, and of course Santa
Well,
Rita.
this area here is tremendous oil basin. These wells, little spots here, are just little wells all over the place. In fact, we're doing a project right now, right in here. There's nothing, but I've got the satellite information that tells me it's there, and I'm getting this from Kerr-McGee. I do a lot with Kerr-McGee. My dad was in the uranium business in the 50s. In fact, he opened the first uranium mine in the United States in 1950, open pit. And Kerr-McGee came in, and so he worked a lot with Kerr-McGee. So I got to know those guys at Kerr-McGee when I was about 10 years old. Even though I was just a kid, I followed my dad everywhere he went. I was his shadow, and I got involved in uranium when I got out of high school. And I just grew with it into oil and gas with Kerr-McGee when uranium, after 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl, uranium took a major dump. We should have nuclear power running this whole country right now. It's the cheapest, most efficient, and the safest way, period. Even after 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl, nobody died. Nobody got radiation poisoning. It was just a big scare. Anti-nuclear people made a big deal out of it, but it is extremely safe. Mm-hmm. And when they build a nuclear reactor, they take a little pile of uranium and they put it down in the ground 8-10 miles. So it's not going to come up. Something happened. And nothing can happen anyway. But if it did, it's so deep. And we're a foolish country for not using nuclear power. But and even I'm an oil and gas guy now, I'm for gas, but nuclear power really is, our power bills would be 10% of what they are today. But anyway, this is what's the biggest thing right now. Right now I've got a farm out coming from Kerr-McGee for another 150,000 acres. Mostly right now I take up small acreage from farmers around here and ranchers and do small agreements. I don't want to do another big oil company like Unioil or PDC. We're recruiting young guys to run the company. I'm 71. I want to work till I'm 75. Luckily I'm in great health. So I'll probably work even beyond that, but we're recruiting young guys to come in and run the company. Most of them are in their 40s, so they can be here for another 20 years. So we're teaching them all this and giving them all the information we have. And we have a lot of data in our files in Las Vegas and here. And if I want to know something about here, all I got to do is call Kerr-McGee, and they'll tell me what they have. And they'll have something around here. Kerr-McGee has probably did seismic, probably all of northern Colorado, and they have satellites information on the whole state. And it takes a company like Kerr-McGee to do that, and Amoco, which was Chevron in the old days, is split up now and is now owned by a company called Anadarko. Anadarko bought Amoco, and then Anadarko, they also bought Kerr-McGee. But they took Amoco and folded it inside of Anadarko, but they left Kerr-McGee standing on its own. It's such a great company and so efficient, they haven't touched it. They let management make its own decisions, but it is wholly owned subsidiary. Wow. There's probably not a finer company in America than Kerr-McGee, really. And the thing is, they're nice people.
It's a public company, Kerr-McGee?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so New York Stock Exchange.
Yeah, Anadarko bought control about 2 years ago. I go to their offices here now, and they still act like there's nothing's changed, and really nothing has. But they're very active out here, and if you want to look at these little black polka dots, those are all oil wells. These other ones are gas wells and oil well combinations. You see a lot of them with an empty center in it and 4 points. That means a dry hole. But that's not really a dry hole either, because maybe they didn't drill it deep enough, or they drilled it before they had the information we have today, or maybe in most cases didn't drill deep enough, because we have 7 pay zones here. It starts out at the very bottom is the D zone, which is our primary target, and then above that is the J sand, which is the biggest producer, and then the Codell, which is the main target here, and then above that is the Niobrara, and above that is the Shannon, above that is the Sussex. So when you drill here, we guarantee no dry holes. How can I get a dry hole? There's 6 pay zones. I'm not going to miss them all. And there are blankets, large blanket sands. The Niobrara is 142 miles long by 46 miles wide. Ray Charles can drill in there. It's going to go well. It's just going to happen.
Ray
Just tell
Charles.
That's good, because we have the Codell and the Niobrara, which are the 2 primary producers, and between the 2 of them, you're going to start out at about 110, 120 barrels a day oil and gas equivalent. And that'll operate the first year, which you'll get your money back probably in 15 months. And then these wells will produce 100 years. We didn't know it until 4 years ago that we could go back into a well and refrac it. We were always afraid to, and we thought we would crush that steel. When we frac a well, we run that pipe down 8,000 feet, and we cement the last 500 feet in for an anchor, and then we go in and we shoot holes in that pipe. We might shoot 90 to 110 holes, and they're like bullets, and they just shoot holes in the pipe with a perforation gun. And then so when we frac it, we blast the chemicals and the water through those 90 holes, those bullet holes. Well, we never really realized that we could do it more than once. We thought we'd probably weaken the pipe, let's not fool it. We found out we can. So now they're going to frac them every 5 years. So when a well trickles down, so say it starts out at 100 barrels a day and it'll work its way down in 5 years to probably 20. Frac it, go back to 80 or 90, frac it up and down. And these wells will last 100 years plus. Right now, the 800 wells I drilled here, they've gone in. I kept a royalty on all the wells, of course. And they have refracked, out of the 880 I sold them, they have refracked so far 120. And plus they're drilling new ones. But as the well trickles down, they frack it. They drill more new wells than they frack the old one, but to refrack a well, you're looking at $110,000. To drill a new well, you're looking at $1 million. So they do both. But our real interest now is building a brand new company here with ranchers, and we're just going to go in and copycat everything we did in the past. The big advantage now is I know probably 90% of the farmers around here. Just from this town here, if you go 10 miles in any direction, I drilled 120 wells. So I know every farmer, every rancher. I know their children, most of them. I shouldn't say everyone, but the big majority.
How long are the leases usually for, Lloyd?
Well, you lease go off for 5 years, you lease the lease. But once you hit oil, it's forever.
Okay.
If you quit producing 366 days, you'll lose it. So they do, a lot of companies will wait 364 days, they'll turn it back on and hold it another 5 years. I've never done that. I think that's despicable. You let the farmer have his well back, his land back, and let somebody else take it. Just because you don't have the money or the time to fool with it, it's not right to the farmer, because he gets 12.5% of every ounce of oil that comes out of the ground. Well, that's a lot. Today they get 18%, but on the old leases they're still 12.5%. But I've got leases that my dad did in 1946. We still hold them, and we're still making oil.
Wow.
And you did them in Farmington, New Mexico, around Cortez, in Bloomfield, New Mexico area. And they're still producing. They're not as good as these, but they're mostly gas over there. But, it doesn't take much to keep them running, and those checks come every month. Out of I drill 1,318 wells, and I still get checks on about 1,100 wells a month. But I keep 2% of every well we do. But, I don't take a payroll. I'm not on salary. I earn mine by finding the location, set it up, drill it. I get 2%. My partner gets 2%, and we do that every well. And it's a good way to go. It's fair. It's cheap. And I've got all this stuff at my fingertips. I don't spend any real money anymore like I used to. Now I can just walk in Kerr-McGee, I can go to Amoco, I can go to Anadarko. I do a lot with a company called Noble Energy. If you're in the stock market, you probably know who Noble is. They're a pretty good stock. I'm working out a contract now with them on a new proposition I've got called Blue Box. It's entirely different. But I'm working with Noble and Kerr-McGee on that. But this is what's really exciting, and you can figure here on a well, you get your money back in no less than 18, 24 months, 99% of the cases. And if oil goes higher, of course, your payout's faster. If it goes down, it's going to be slower. But $80 oil, I don't know what your numbers are. What do you figure?
We've got it at 90, but the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, has done a great deal of study, and they say that it should be 180 a barrel by the end of the decade if nothing changes politically. No wars with Iran, nothing catastrophic like that. It'll be 180. Now, if we got in a conflict with Iran, it'd probably go up $300 a barrel. But just at the steady rate, 180 a barrel is what the IMF says. I think there's an article in here about it. It's a very recent article. So we're looking at a steady rise in the value of oil.
Yeah, you're going to see the price continue to go higher and higher.
Yeah. So for the investors such as ourselves, if oil goes up, does that increase our royalty check?
What's that?
Does that increase our funds monthly when oil goes up? It does.
Oh, yeah, your price goes up.
You're a partner.
So,
And I think we'll see $180, $200 oil within a year and a half.
Yeah, I mean,
We're
that's
just using it so fast. There's so many problems around the world.
yeah, because there's a very good chance something will happen that
People
IMF
used to
thinks-
laugh when you said 100. That's just the beginning. We're buying more oil from Iran today than we've ever bought. With Saudi Arabia. We're buying 2 more million barrels a month now than we did a year ago. 2 million barrels. Why? We have a thing here called environmentalists that slow us down. Wildlife agencies. Our biggest enemy is the fish and game, wildlife, and environmentalists. They won't let you near anything. And unfortunately, there's a lot of oil under that property.
Sure is.
We have a lot of it here in Colorado. We're forbidden to drill, and yet you'd make a well in a heartbeat. And we'll always have that problem here. I think a lot of it is designed. Let's use everybody else's oil up and keep ours for last. I think that's a lot of the philosophy. We have more oil in the ground than anybody, yet we're not doing anything about it. We used to have a 3-to-1 write-off. If they came out right now with a 3-to-1 write-off, we'd be so busy drilling, it'd be pathetic. But there's no tax credits anymore other than 1-for-1. We used to have 7-to-1 when I did this. started.
Wow.
Can you imagine 7-to-1 tax credit? And even 3-to-1 is terrific.
It is.
But it looks like we're going to go back to one probably, well, it depends on the election, but I think if the Republicans get in, we'll get another tax credit. And unfortunately, I grew up a Democrat, and I have a lot of Democrat principles in me, but I don't believe in what's going on anymore. But anyway, getting back to this is just one corner of the state. It's the northeast corner. And you got 44,000 wells right here. And if you look at these maps here, this is what we're currently doing. This is the project we're talking to you guys about. This is the Windsor 14. All these have already been surveyed in. We're going under a housing development here. We're not drilling from that angle. We're going to drill 5 from here, and we're going to drill 5 from here, and 4 from here. These here under the lake are already permitted, these first 3, and then these 2 are pending. And this is the next well, so we're going to go out and see that one. And then we'll do these 9 under this housing section. The homeowners share in all 14 wells, so nobody's objecting. I think out of 126 people, 5 objected, and that's foolish. They're going to get it anyway when you get that big majority, and they have what they call forced pooling, so that it's going to happen once you get 50%. But can you imagine royalty off of 9 wells? Just from here on down is 9, and then from here is 14. Yeah, it's going to pay their property taxes, their house payment, their car payment. And this is a super project.